How do you teach and encourage people to cultivate real intimacy with God and with other people? Well, I think first of all, it starts out by modeling it. When I think about the ways that I've been impacted in terms of wanting to go deeper in my relationship with God and in relationship with other people, it's been because I've seen somebody else who has that kind of intimacy, and it's made me realize that that's possible. It's awakened a hunger in me to know God in a deeper way and to be more vulnerable in my relationships. As a leader, you can also cultivate spaces, create spaces that really ask for vulnerability. I think a lot of people that go to small groups in churches or Bible studies or even home groups, they feel like it's sort of superficial. Maybe they just talk about the sermon last week and it feels like this is my spiritual work. But you can talk about the Bible all day long and not have intimacy with God. We see that in the New Testament religious leaders, the Pharisees and the scribes and the Sadducees. They knew the scriptures better than anyone, but they had no intimacy with God. And so we want to make sure that although we're teaching people the scripture, we're also creating spaces for them to go deeper and become vulnerable and honest with what's really happening within them. You might want to check out some of Kurt Thompson's work. He's written a lot and has a podcast that talk about how we create vulnerable communities that help people foster that kind of intimate community with one another and with God. And it's different than just your normal weekly gathering. It has to be intentional. I'd also recommend the book called The Other Half of the Church that talks about how we take biblical concepts and put them into identity and group community so that we really are fostering that depth of relationship with God and with others. And finally, here's a suggestion that I take very personally, and I do this. Read the dead old guys. Now, what do I mean by the dead old guys? I mean the fathers of our faith who lived 50 years ago, hundreds of years ago. They write from a different place of intimacy with God. I think a lot of our current writing and literature and podcasting is so caught up in kind of the individualism of our culture that we're losing something. And so when I read people like Andrew Murray and A.W. Tozer and Moody and Spurgeon and John Newton, they cultivate within me a desire and a knowledge of intimacy with God that I wouldn't otherwise have. And so I'd encourage you to mix in some of those dead old guys along with maybe some of your current reading to really get a sense of the intimacy that God calls us to.